Not to say it's going to solve the problem and you'll just wake up one day after drawing a picture and be like, okay, I feel great. Hey artists and art lovers, it's Allison, trying not to sound super fake with that greeting. And it's another episode of The Artist Couch. And today is so different, so insane. Instead of sitting on the couch behind me, I'm sitting on the floor in front of the couch. I know. Let's take a moment to compose ourselves. Okay? So the reason that I'm down here is because I have this big roll of paper for a commission that I'm working on. It was too big for me to get like a sketch pad or anything. And so I needed to work on the table. The table's pretty low, so I'm sitting on the floor. And today's video is going to talk about grief and art and how art is, or rather why I think art is an essential tool for dealing with grief, and that I think it should be more commonly used. I lost quite a lot of people during my time in high school. A lot of people died, and that was really hard for me, and no one really ever suggested art as something for me to use as a tool for my grief. Now luckily I was already really into art, so I kind of found it on my own and used it to move through the stages of grief and finally reach acceptance. But yeah, even like, you know, I had a ton of friends, teachers, I was in therapy. It never really came up. And I know that for a lot of my friends who weren't like artsy people, I don't think they ever really used it as a tool, and I think it could have been really helpful for them. So I'll start by saying, you know, art on its own, I don't think could have helped me fully reach like a sense of closure and acceptance, but it was an amazing tool. It really helped me. And yeah, you know, that's not to say it's going to solve the problem and you'll just wake up one day after drawing a picture and be like, okay, I feel great. But it's definitely an amazing tool to use. So I've got my phone here because my memory is not awesome when I'm making videos, and I'm going to just go through the stages of grief and talk about how art kind of helped me through those stages and how I think it could help just about anyone. And I'm also gonna work on this drawing, so it's not just you watching me talk. Although you can't see it. No, you can see it. Okay. So, the first stage is denial and isolation. Totally remember that like it was yesterday. It's really hard thinking about the fact that like you're never gonna see that person again. And I remembered just wanting to be alone. Like I didn't want to talk to my friends. I didn't want to talk to my parents. I didn't want to go to school. Like I was resistant even about the idea of going to therapy because I was like, what's the point? And in those moments where you're alone and that's all you want to do, like I'm already not like, I'm a way more visual person than I am like a verbal person. And since these were feelings that I was experiencing for the first time, not that it gets any easier, but you know, I'm 17. It's the first time I'm experiencing any kind of like tragedy like this, so close to home. And I didn't know how to, like, even if I had wanted to talk about it, I wouldn't have known how. Like, I could not put it into words. Like, even when I was journaling, I felt like I wasn't finding the right words for like what I was feeling and going through. And so, you know, I found myself every day, the only thing I wanted to do was just like sit by myself, like in front of the TV or listening to music and just like make art. And I wasn't thinking about like, how's this gonna look? Is it gonna look good? I wasn't thinking about like, you know, who's gonna see this or anything like that. I was just thinking like, this is something that feels good and easy to do, and I can do it by myself. Like no one's gonna come over and no one's here. Like it's something that doesn't require anyone else's participation or attention. And so in that way, it kind of kept my time alone from being as harmful as it could have been, because I was still doing something productive and I was still kind of having a conversation with myself about my feelings. And I think that kind of even helped speed up the stage of denial, because by making the work, it was kind of me, by making art, it was me realizing like what I was going through and accepting like this is really happening. And like I said, I wasn't trying to make like super beautiful art. It was just, sometimes it would just be me like going through a magazine and just looking at something like a shade of blue or like a person on a beach or anything and just being like, I feel that. And I would just cut it out and paste it on something and like make doodles or swirls or whatever. Like, it was just me feeling like I was making something about myself that was just for me. Second stage is anger. So I'll talk about something that really pissed me off, in addition to like, I'm never gonna see my friend again. And that was the people who would like, I'm gonna call it like appropriating grief. Like people who I wasn't friends with, people who didn't even know the person who had passed away, like people who were never nice to me, all of a sudden like really wanting to be in my circle and trying to talk to me and be like, oh my God, like, didn't you know him? Like, I've seen you guys together. Like, didn't you know that person? And people all of a sudden being like, I can't believe she's gone. Like, it's a couple different people if you're noticing the pronoun switch. I just like thought it was so infuriating, because not only was it like, I felt like it was kind of disrespectful, I also felt like, I'm having like the worst time of my life, as, so far. Not fun. Like, I wasn't having a good time. Like, I was not aware of the extra attention. I kind of resented it. I just wanted to be alone. And the thought that there were people who were like trying to insert themselves into this awful occurrence just so that they could feel something, I just felt like it was so horrible. And like, it made me feel like, even now I'm like, oh, like it really like made me so angry and so sad, because I was like, why would anyone want to feel this way? Like, why would anyone want to go through this? Like, they clearly don't understand it. And the fact that they're just seeing it as like, something that they can make a status, or something that can be something to do, like, oh, I don't have anything, I don't know. And obviously, like, I'm tempted to make excuses for them, but it's like, I really can't, like, because I see it happen all the time, and I really think that it's something that needs to stop. But anyway, back to like the subject of today's video. That was one of my huge sources of anger. And as you can see, it's not easy for me to talk about now, 10 years later, 11 years later. So it was really hard for me to express at the time. I don't know that I ever really talked about it to anyone. So having art as a way to like deal with what I was feeling, and having art as a way to just express the abstract feeling of rage, was really good. And I feel like there were probably a lot of way worse coping mechanisms that I could have found. And so having a way to just like, blah, like just throw all this anger onto a sheet of paper and then like rip it up, or like throw it away or burn it, like just having something to do that made me feel better without, without having to worry about sounding crazy to anyone else, or worry about like making other people feel unnecessary anger. It was like a really amazing tool, and I'm sure anyone who's felt like anger can relate. Like, sometimes you just like, you're so mad you don't even know what to do with it, and I'm telling you, just make some art. because journaling is my other go-to, but sometimes the words just don't do it justice. It's like you have to like get a marker and just go blah. So that's that. Bargaining. So bargaining, that's kind of like the worst one, I think. I definitely experienced a lot of feelings of like, oh, if only I had like talked to her more about this, if only we'd seen the signs, like if only I had like done this or that or whatever, you know. So, and that was something like, for me, obviously everyone's experience with each of these stages is different, but for me it was very uncomfortable to talk about because it felt bad to think that there was something I could have done or that anyone could have done that just didn't happen. And so even journaling about it wasn't making me feel much better because it just made me feel like, oh, I didn't do enough, I didn't do anything. So at that point, I think trying to articulate those feelings or trying to talk about them with anyone, it was necessary, and I was making an effort like in therapy and with friends, but too much of it it couldn't on its own help me feel better. And at times when I was alone, like I couldn't talk to myself about it, and I didn't want to journal about it because by myself it would just like send me into like a panic attack. So making art as a way to indirectly express those feelings was really great for me. And I feel like I wish I had some examples. Maybe I'll put links to some in the show notes if I can find them, but it would be stuff that, like, if you were looking at it, you wouldn't know that that's what I was going through or that was like what it was about. Like, I don't even know if all the times I knew that that's what I was trying to work through, but it would really just be like scribbles, or it would be like, you know, a set of eyes, or like a collage of something. And when I look at it, I know like that's what I was feeling at the time. But I say that to say, like, I don't want people to think that you have to literally like draw a picture of someone like bargaining or take a picture of someone looking sad. Like, it was just the act of making work was indirectly becoming a way for me to express those feelings without putting pressure on myself and without like overwhelming myself. Yes. Okay. Fourth stage is depression. I've talked a lot about depression. I had a video recently where I talked about how art is a great tool for mental wellness and a great way to help yourself through those stages and through those feelings. And, you know, just like bargaining, like when I was in the pit of despair, which I feel like the whole being 17 is already kind of a pit of despair, but tossing these events on top, like, my God. So, you know, being able to create just like really dramatic, like really sad work, like being able to just go through magazines or go into a sketchbook and find stuff that I felt like showed my feelings, you know. Sorry, I'm making light of it, but it really was helpful, because depression, we all know, is like a hard thing to talk about, and everyone deals with it differently. There's no right or wrong way to show what you're feeling, or there's no right or wrong way to experience it. Like, depression doesn't have a specific look, you know. And so being able to make work when I was going through that and not having to feel like I was doing it wrong, because there's always going to be someone who's going to say, like, well, you don't look depressed, like, you don't seem depressed, like, I saw you smile the other day, it seems like you're fine, you know. So whenever I would have stages where it was really bad and I didn't know like how to talk about it, being able to make work, again, was just a perfect way, and no pressure, no obligation way to work through those feelings and just get through it. And again, like, It's not like it was literally like a sad face that I was drawing. It would just be like, okay, like just doing something with my hands to like get through this next hour, you know? And the last stage is acceptance. That stage is kind of hard too, because for me, I was depressed for a really long time, and when I finally started to reach a point where I wasn't sad anymore, it was weird, because I had been sad for so long that it felt strange to have reached the end of that journey. And art helped me there, along with journaling, because I was making work and realizing like, oh, like my work isn't based on sadness anymore. Like I'm feeling inspired in other ways. I'm not only drawing from like this dark place to find material that inspires me. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'm like on the path to acceptance. Like I feel better. And it wasn't literally like that conversation happened, but it was kind of like over time, like seeing my work evolve and seeing my own mental state kind of evolve with it. Yeah, like it totally, acceptance in itself was a journey, and their art helped me through it. I feel like I really rambled through that last one, but I do feel like if I didn't have art as a way, as like a visual representation of my feelings every day or week or whatever, it might have taken me longer to realize like that I was changing and approaching grief differently and feeling less like hurt about it. Because it almost like you can feel a little guilty when you get to acceptance, because you feel like you're letting that person down, or like you're not remembering them as much as they deserve, but it's just part of life. And the nice thing, again, about another really great thing now that we've reached like the end of the stages, I completely stopped drawing, I like forgot where I was for a second, is that sometimes you end up, artist or not, you end up making something that you really like, and looking back on it, you really feel happy that you made. And sometimes it can be a really beautiful thing, and you hold on to it, and every time you see it, you kind of remember that journey, and you remember like the strength that it took to get through it. And I think that's so important, because the further you get away from those feelings, the easier it is to remember the easier it is to forget how hard it was and how much strength you had to pull on to get yourself through it. And it can really be a motivator when you do go through something again. You can have this visual thing that tells you, like, remember this? Like, you got through that, and you have this new gorgeous piece of art or picture that reminds you of what you did. So, and then also, like, as an artist, I found that using works that I made at that time, or using work that I made at that time, like, sometimes is really great to share with others who are going through it, because they can relate to those feelings, and they can see it and feel less alone or strange about like what they're going through. And I definitely feel like art, above all things, is something that can bring people together and make people feel less alone and increase understanding and just make the world a better place. Okay, so kind of a longer video, but those are my thoughts on art and grief, how they come together, how art helped me through those 5 stages and got me here where I am today, sitting on the floor in front of a couch. So thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to hear what your thoughts are, if you've ever used art as a coping mechanism, or if you can think of other ways, other things, other types of art, like just whatever your thoughts are, just tell me. Just put them in the comments. Go to my Instagram, tell me there, I don't know. But I really enjoyed talking about this. As always, I didn't finish anything, but I made some progress. I got some triangles done, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, I will, I'll lift this up so you can kind of see it, because I didn't do that earlier, but it's some mountains with some surreal sky. I'm not really planning each triangle as I go, I'm winging it, but I think that is like the vibe that I'm going for because it's supposed to be surreal. But anyway, I'll be sure when this is done 5 years from now to put a picture up so you guys can see what it looks like finished. But again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.